Efforts to address climate change, whether by reducing greenhouse gas emissions or adapting to hotter temperatures, rising seas, and more extreme weather, will impact the flow of trade in goods around the world. These changes will also affect Indonesia's ability to transition to a more environmentally sustainable economy while also achieving its goal of becoming a high-income country. While trade can contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, such as through the export of agricultural, manufacturing, and coal and petroleum products, trade can also play a critical part in addressing climate change through cross-border flows of environmentally friendly products and alternatives to plastic. The World Bank's report shows that Indonesia has untapped potential for trading in environmental goods and plastic substitutes. Reviews and reforms of trade policies for these products can help Indonesia reduce the carbon intensity of its exports, make its firms more competitive in green markets, support greener imports, and promote green technologies for domestic production. Indonesia can realize its potential in green trade through reducing remaining tariffs on imports of environmental goods and plastic substitutes, including through multilateral agreements, streamlining and reviewing non-tariff trade measures related to environmental goods and plastic substitutes, harmonizing product standards across markets, and coordinating climate policies to reduce compliance costs and administrative bottlenecks for the private sector, reviewing local content requirements to enable higher growth in renewable energy sector, including enforceable environmental provision in trade agreements and participate in trade initiatives on environmental goods. By integrating trade policies with broader climate strategies, Indonesia can do more to position itself in the global transition to a more environmentally sustainable economy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to join us here in Soehanna Hall as we will commence shortly. Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are still in the lounge, you can enter the hall, fill the seat, as we will start in a few minutes.
Cek.
Good morning, distinguished guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to today's event, Strategic Issues Forum on Trading Towards Sustainability, the role of trade policies in Indonesia's green transformation. This event is jointly organized by the World Bank and the Ministry of Trade. My name is Bayu, and I will be your host today. It is my great pleasure to be here this morning in Soehanna Hall with top policymakers, experts, practitioners, and other stakeholders to discuss how Indonesia can foster an effective trade policy framework in support of sustainable long-term growth. Governments, international organizations, private sectors, and other stakeholders need to work together to foster sustainable green practice and make the trading of environmentally friendly goods more accessible. Today, we are bringing together an extensive range of experts and practitioners, and we invite you to join in. First and foremost, I have the great privilege to welcome our distinguished guest, His Excellency Bapak Zulkifli Hasan, the Minister of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia, represented by Bapak Kasan, the Head of Trade Policy Agency of the Ministry of Trade, Ibu Mari Pangestu, Professor of International Economics and former World Bank Managing Director, Ibu Pande Nyoman Laksmi Kusumawati, Director for Trade, Investment, and International Economic Cooperation of the Bapenas, Ibu Noni Sri Ayati Purnomo, President Commissioner of Bluebird Group Holding. I extend a warm welcome to Ibu Satu Kakonen, World Bank Country Director for Indonesia and Timor-Leste, and other esteemed colleagues from World Bank and Ministry of Trade, other ministries, embassies, partners, and of course, to our prominent lightning speakers, Bapak Suharji Ghazali, Managing Director of Amandina Bumi Nusantara, Ibu Chandra Sri Sutama, Chief Operating Officer of Ekadin, Bapak Fajar Sastro Wijoyo, Founder and Managing Director of Sintex Solar. Welcome to you and to all gathered here in Soehanna Hall and online. Thank you for coming to this event. Before we start, I would like to inform our online participants on YouTube and Zoom that you can switch the channel to Bahasa Indonesia or English anytime during the event. For those on Facebook, it is only available in English. For participants here at the Soehanna Hall, interpretation devices are available at the registration table. We will also provide a certificate for participants that can be processed by filling out an evaluation form at the end of this event. Bagi peserta yang bergabung secara virtual melalui YouTube dan Zoom, Bapak Ibu bisa memilih kanal berbahasa Indonesia atau Inggris. Bagi Bapak Ibu yang bergabung melalui Facebook, siaran hanya tersedia dalam bahasa Inggris. Bagi Bapak Ibu yang berada di sini, di Soehanna Hall bersama kami, tersedia alat penerjemah di meja registrasi apabila diperlukan. E-sertifikat akan diberikan kepada peserta setelah pengisian formulir evaluasi pada akhir acara. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ibu Satu Kakaunen, World Bank Country Director for Indonesia and Timor-Leste, to deliver her welcoming remarks. Ibu Satu, the stage is now at your disposal.
Esteemed speakers, Pak Kasan, Head of Trade Policy Agency, Ministry of Trade, Ibu Mari Pangestu, Professor of International Economics, University of Indonesia, and former World Bank Managing Director of Development Policy and Partnerships, Ibu Laksmi Kusumawati, Director of Trade, Investment and International Economic Cooperation, Bapenas, Ibu Nuni Purnomo, President Director of PT Bluebird, Pak Suharji, Ibu Chandra, Pak Fajar, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of the World Bank report on the role of trade in Indonesia's green transformation. We are very pleased to be co-organizing this event together with the Trade Policy Agency of the Ministry of Trade. And I would also like to thank the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for their support of this work. Now, there's increasing recognition that trade plays a role in transition to a greener and more sustainable global economy. Good example is the COP28 climate summit in Dubai that included for the first time a trade day that brought together world leaders and experts to explore the untapped potential of trade in being one of the solutions to climate crisis. And trade policies can connect economic growth and environmental sustainability goals. Well-designed trade policies can promote win-win outcomes for both climate and trade. They can also help boost countries' access to green technologies and support the development of green industries. Indonesia has already made progress in harnessing trade for its green transformation. The carbon intensity of Indonesia's trade and Indonesia's trade flows has declined significantly, by over half since 2005. This is significant. But there is, however, and the however is that Indonesia's green competitiveness is now stagnating, and exports of green goods, technologies, and services have not kept up with the demand. This calls for action. Let me highlight 3 messages from the report that we are launching today for Indonesia. The first message is that increased global and domestic demand for green goods and technologies provides significant opportunities for Indonesia, and we would encourage Indonesia to tap these. The international trading system is being reshuffled as businesses and consumers are increasingly driven by sustainability considerations. While exports of primary products and carbon-intensive manufacturing still dominate Indonesia's production and exports, the report that we are launching today shows that Indonesia has significant potential to diversify into green products with higher complexity. And Indonesia's potential is relatively higher than that of its neighboring countries in East Asia and Pacific. And such diversification would have growth and climate benefits. So that was the first message. The second message is that the private sector is the key to realize such green diversification potential. Therefore, policies to facilitate private sector access to lower cost and higher quality technologies through imports will be critical. Will be critical to ensure that the transformation happens. Indonesian firms that both export and import account today for a larger share of green goods trade and also perform better. You will see it in the report. The results show that. But these firms have reported that trade policies, such as non-tariff measures, pose a major challenge for scaling up their trade and scaling up their business. Our estimates suggest that some non-tariff measures impose significant costs equivalent to about 30% tariff. That is massive. Let's turn to the third message. The third message is that the time has come to align Indonesia's trade policies with green development. Trade policies have not yet been integrated in Indonesia's nationally determined contributions and broader climate actions and plans. The new National Medium-Term Development Plan that is currently being finalized and regulated is an opportunity to put forward ambitious trade policy reforms. Such reforms would support Indonesia's long-term climate and growth objectives. And my colleague, Ibu Angela, will elaborate on our recommendations for Indonesia to leverage trade policies for green transformation. So you will hear much more about the recommendations that we have. But I'm very pleased that we have such distinguished set of speakers and panelists with us today. I'm very grateful that you are joining us today. Pak Kasan, Ibu Mari, Ibu Laksmi, Ibu Noni, Ibu Jandra, Pak Suharji, and Pak Fajar. I look forward, and we all look forward to hearing your recommendations, and I hope that you will enjoy the rest of the event. Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you very much, Ibu Satu. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now hear a keynote speech from the Minister of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia, represented by the head of Trade Policy Agency. Please join me in welcoming Bapak Kasan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Izinkan saya membacakan keynote speech dari Bapak Menteri Perdagangan pada hari ini dalam bahasa Indonesia.
In Indonesian. He initially wanted to come, and I have tried to convince him until Wednesday. However, at the last minute, he regretfully has another agenda that he has to attend to, so that he cannot come here. So I am actually assigned to read out his remarks. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon you all. Good morning and good tidings for all of us. Distinguished the World Bank Country Director for Indonesia and Timor-Leste, Ibu Satu Kakonen, and all of the World Bank's team, the Minister of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia from 2004 to 2011, who is also a professor for international economics from Universitas Indonesia, Ibu Mari Elka Pangestu, distinguished ambassadors of friendly countries or the representatives, speakers and moderators, the officials from line ministries, leaders, CEOs of corporations, and all of the distinguished guests who attend this event online or offline. Let us address our gratitude to the Almighty because of His blessing and guidance that all of us are given the health and the opportunity to attend in this highly productive event this morning. First of all, allow me to extend sincerest apology from our Minister of Trade who cannot attend this event directly because he has another agenda that he has to attend to. On behalf of the Minister of Trade, we would like also to extend our highest appreciation to the World Bank office in Indonesia that has collaborated with the Ministry of Trade in the organizing of this strategic issue forum as our measures to support sustainable trade in Indonesia, specifically in regards to the trade policy's role in the green transformations in Indonesia. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for the time being, we have witnessed the fundamental changes in the economic and global trade. There is a shift of role played by developed countries and the economic growth as well as the roles played by the developing countries. Geopolitical tension has made the trade relationship more fragmented. Global economic prospect of the World Bank in the beginning of this year also highlighted that the global economic growth will experience a slowdown to 2.4% by 2024. It is estimated that the developed country will only grow around 1.2%, while developing countries show relatively better performance and will grow around 3.9%. With all of these global challenges and uncertainty, with the additional geopolitical tension, Indonesia's economy is projected to be growing around 5%. In 2023, Indonesia's economy is indicated by the well-managed inflation around 2.61% and is actually the lowest for the past 20 years. Indonesia's export in 2023 has reached 258.82 billion US dollars, which is actually a decrease in compared to the same period in 2022. Nevertheless, we are still maintaining the surplus trend of our trade balance for 44 months consecutively since May 2020. The last year surplus has reached almost 37 billion US dollar. This sustainable surplus trend becoming the longest surplus period for the past 15 years. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has a great potentials and the natural resources to develop a green and sustainable trade, which is expected to reduce the impact of climate change, which will also give additional economic value for the people. So it's time for Indonesia not to export raw materials without added value and to maintain a good sustainability principles. And one of the ways of doing this is to mainstream the mining products. Nickel is one of the most important materials for many products from automotive, electronics, constructions, household appliances, agricultural machines, including battery that is environmental friendly. At the global level, Indonesia, as the nickels exporters, has increased from 8th rank in 2021 to become the first in 2022. And it's actually beating other countries that were the nickel exporters, such as Canada, Russia, and the US, which were considered to be the largest nickel exporters in the world. This is actually a huge optimism for Indonesia. Indonesia has to be able to develop that mainstreaming for more and better sustainable trade for primary commodities so that our vision to become more developed countries in 2045 will be realized. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the World Bank's report, which will be presented in today's dialogue, is expected to give you an overview as well as to help the stakeholders, the policymakers, including Indonesia's trade partners, so that we can jointly create a more environmental friendly trade policies and more equal partnerships with others. The results of the World Bank reports also show that the non-tariff measures have generated more significant costs to greener products, so that we will need to have a policy reform so that we'll be able to increase green or environmental friendly trade performance at the global level. Therefore, our ministry, the Ministry of Trade, has a strong commitment to promote the trade policies that will play an important role to ensure a more sustainable trade in Indonesia. The key here is to collaborate and to cooperate. We hope that today's meeting or event will be able to develop a more um, so that we can be able to create a more sustainable trade and green transformation that will bring a lot of benefits for our nation. Signed by the Minister of Trade himself, Mr. Zulkifli Hasan. Thank you very much. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bapak Kasan for delivering the minister's speech on his behalf. If I may, we would like to ask you to remain on stage. We would like to present tokens of appreciations to our panelists and speakers for the forthcoming insightful discussions. I would like to invite Ibu Satu again to join the stage with our panelists and speakers for a group photo. Ibu Satu, Ibu Mari, Ibu Laksmi, Ibu Noni, Bapak Soeharji, Ibu Chandra, and Bapak Fajar, please come to the stage. And we will handling the tokens of appreciations to our panelists. To Ibu Satu. Ibu Satu, if I may, you can handling the tokens of appreciation. Apologies Bapak Ibu, could you please remain on stage? And Pak Habib, Bu Sila, Bu Angela, can you please join the panelists and speakers for a group photo? Okay, thank you all. We will move to our next agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, next on our agenda is a presentation on trading towards sustainability, the role of trade policies in Indonesia's Green Transformation Report, that will be delivered by Ibu Angela Monfakon, an economist at the World Bank. Before we continue, we will have a video summary of the report.
Efforts to address climate change, whether by reducing greenhouse gas emissions or adapting to hotter temperatures, rising seas, and more extreme weather, will impact the flow of trade and goods around the world. These changes will also affect Indonesia's ability to transition to a more environmentally sustainable economy while also achieving its goal of becoming a high-income country. While trade can contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, such as through the export of agricultural, manufacturing, and coal and petroleum products, trade can also play a critical part in addressing climate change through cross-border flows of environmentally friendly products and alternatives to plastic. The World Bank's report shows that Indonesia has untapped potential for trading in environmental goods and plastic substitutes. Reviews and reforms of trade policies for these products can help Indonesia reduce the carbon intensity of its exports, make its firms more competitive in green markets, support greener imports, and promote green technologies for domestic production. Indonesia can realize its potential in green trade through reducing remaining tariffs on imports of environmental goods and plastic substitutes, including through multilateral agreements, streamlining and reviewing non-tariff trade measures related to environmental goods and plastic substitutes, harmonizing product standards across markets, and coordinating climate policies to reduce compliance costs and administrative bottlenecks for the private sector, reviewing local content requirements to enable higher growth in renewable energy sector, including enforceable environmental provision in trade agreements and participate in trade initiatives on environmental goods. By integrating trade policies with broader climate strategies, Indonesia can do more to position itself in the global transition to a more environmentally sustainable economy.
Thank you. Bu Angela, we eagerly await your presentation. The floor is now yours.
Selamat pagi. Good morning, everyone. Our esteemed speakers, Pak Hassan, Head of Trade Policy Agency from the Ministry of Trade, Ibu Mari, Professor of International Economics and former World Bank Managing Director, Ibu Laxmi, the Director of Trade, Investment and International Cooperation from the Bapanas, Ibu Noni, President Commissioner of Bluebird Group, our lightning speakers, Pak Suhaji, Ibu Kandra, Pak Fajar, ambassadors, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. As we heard from the speech by Pak Hassan, but also Ibu Satu, there's increasing recognition on the role of trade in addressing climate change, both mitigation and adaptation and broader environmental protections. In our presentation today, we'll highlight the trade policies that could help in enhancing the role of trade in Indonesia's green transformation. Can I have the presentation on the screen, please? So this is a brief outline of our presentation today. First, we'll try to ask the question, how exactly can trade play this role? And if there really is a case to be made for environmental goods to assist in the green transformation, then we will try to look at how much is Indonesia already trading in what we're calling green goods and also plastic substitutes. And finally, the trade policy recommendations that could better enhance this complementarity. On our first point, environmental policies are increasing around the world. As you can see on the chart on the far left, this is not only happening in high-income countries, but also in emerging and developing economies, as more and more actions are put in place to address climate change. The chart in the middle shows that compared to other countries, and especially Indonesia's key trading partners, Indonesia's environmental policy index is relatively low. Nevertheless, Indonesia has continued to place environmental policies such as on deforestation, moving towards sustainable palm oil, curtailing plastics waste, and carbon pricing instruments. All of these efforts by the world and Indonesia will affect global flows of trade, and Indonesia's ability to transition to a more environmentally sustainable economy on its path to become a high-income nation is therefore interlinked with trade policy. The final chart on the screen shows some of these impacts of worldwide action on climate change. When we look at all of Indonesia's trading partners implementing their NDCs, we can see that by 2030, there are going to be impacts in output, but also Indonesia's imports and exports. A lot of these impacts are coming to industries and products that have very high carbon intensities. And what we see is that production and demand is moving more and more towards less carbon intensive industries. So the negative impact on imports, but also output, is mainly coming through those industries. So how can trade play a role and ensure that this shift in production could indeed play a role and help Indonesia become a more environmentally sustainable economy as it continues to grow? First, trade helps to shift production to cleaner practices. This happens through two ways. One, as demand is increasing for ecological products, there are more and more incentives for companies to also adapt to that demand. At the same time, because of the threat of climate events, we see that this shift in production also goes towards more climate resilience in companies. Second, trading in environmental products, and I'll get into what these consist of in a minute, has been found to reduce the ecological footprints and increase the environmental quality of countries that trade more in these products. Third, lowering tariffs on environmental goods has been found to help reduce emissions and also increase exports, as most of these products are in fact used for production by companies and less so as consumption goods. And finally, trade in plastic substitutes has been found to have the potential to reduce by up to 17% plastic waste by 2040. So Before we continue, it's important that we understand what constitutes environmental goods or green goods. Globally, there have been a lot of efforts to put together a list of products that we can call green products. The purpose of these efforts has been, as you have already heard, to help the movement of green technologies around the world more seamlessly through cross-border trade. There are three lists that exist, and in this report, the World Bank combines all of the internationally recognized lists of green goods that constitute different environmental functions, from energy transition to natural resource management to climate adaptation, waste management and recycling, but also just broader environmental protection. In our report, there's a detailed analysis on some examples of what constitutes these products. Some are a little bit more day-to-day when we think about renewable energy, but also, as we'll hear later today, it includes things like carbon capture storage and also addressing plastic recycling. So how much does Indonesia actually trade in these green goods? Our analysis shows that Indonesia indeed has untapped potential in exports of green goods. On the chart on the left, we see that when it comes to exports, Indonesia's averages are lower than the region in East Asia, but also the globe. But on the right, it suggests that how much Indonesia imports of green goods is almost at par with the globe. What that suggests is that at the moment, most of these green goods are in fact playing the role of access and transmission of new green technologies, most of which are not yet available in Indonesia. Indeed, a closer look at these environmental goods shows that most of them have high technological intensity, meaning that a lot of them are helping companies in their transformation, but also cleaner production. When we look at trade in plastic substitutes, we see that, again, Indonesia has untapped potential. Indonesia is among the top 20 traders when it comes to importing and exporting plastic substitutes. And the chart on the right-hand side shows that Indonesia is, in fact, a net exporter of environmentally sustainable plastic substitutes. However, we are seeing that the levels of this trade has been declining over time. When we look at how this potential can be achieved, we see that the private sector will play a critical role. All of the three charts on the screen now are showing that firms that are trading in green goods have higher survival rates in foreign markets. Crucially, we find that firms that are involved in global value chains and that are more internationally exposed and that import and export simultaneously have higher levels of exports of green goods. This higher survival and seeming benefits for firms that are already involved in environmental goods trade is suggestive of their benefits. We find that over 90% of these products are in fact intermediate and capital goods, meaning that companies are continuing to import them to help in their production processes. So how can trade policies play a role in helping the private sector and Indonesia as a whole to tap into this potential? Our first recommendation is on tariffs. Indonesia already committed to reducing tariffs on some green goods through the APEC agreement. And average tariffs on environmental goods are generally low. However, most favored nation tariffs are quite high, and Indonesia does not participate in most of the multilateral initiatives on green goods. Our analysis suggests that if Indonesia was to join one of these initiatives, which is the World Trade Organization Environmental Goods Agreement, there would be significant positive effects when it comes to imports and exports of environmental goods. So we recommend reducing remaining tariffs on imports of green goods and plastic substitutes, including through plurilateral participation. Second, as you heard in Ibu Satu's presentation, our analysis suggests that while most non-tariff measures are in place to achieve legitimate public policy objectives, there are some that cause significant costs to environmental goods and plastic substitutes. Estimates suggest that some of these are equivalent to up to a 30% tariff. The chart we see on the left-hand side at the top shows that some of these measures, when they're applied to green goods, they have higher compliance cost in Indonesia compared to the same measure also applied to green goods in other countries in ASEAN. We also see that some measures increase the costs of the imports of plastic substitutes, which could disincentivize the shift to more sustainable plastic alternatives. So we recommend streamlining non-tariff measures on green goods and plastic substitutes and conducting systematic and periodic review of these trade regulations to see which of them are affecting more environmentally friendly products, which of them can be lifted, and which can be improved in their implementation. Third, we recommend working towards harmonization and mutual recognition of product standards. As part of this report, surveys suggest that firms that are trading in environmental goods in Indonesia find it difficult to have the standards that they have to comply with in Indonesia and also apply different standards when they enter foreign markets. Over 80% of firms surveyed reported that harmonization of Indonesian standards in foreign markets is a key obstacle when it comes to green goods. Therefore, we recommend working towards harmonization and mutual recognition of product standards across markets. And one way to do that is through coordination, and we heard from Pak Hassan's speech on the coordination between Indonesia and its trading partners. When we have climate policies that are likely to affect trade, this will help private sector and firms that are trading in environmental goods to be able to comply and have lower bottlenecks. Finally, fourth, we recommend reviewing and relaxing local content requirements to help accelerate the growth of the renewable energy sector. We're going to hear more on the renewable energy sector from one practitioner during our lightning talk speeches. But what we see is that the growth in the imports and exports of electric vehicles, but also solar power panels, has been increasing in the last few years. And there is scope for countries to agree and cooperate better when it comes to green industrial policies, including local content requirements, but also subsidies, procurement, and intellectual property. If Indonesia has already delayed the increase of local content requirements on both solar and electric vehicles in the recent months. So we recommend continuing to review local content requirements to help strengthen the domestic supply chains and also establish demand not only for renewable energy, but also renewable energy enabling projects. Finally, when we look at the trade agreements that Indonesia has, out of the 14 trade agreements that were analyzed as part of this report, only 6 of them had some sort of environmental provisions. And among those 6, only 1 was strongly enforceable. So we recommend including enforceable environmental provisions when making trade agreements. And this can also include participating in both the plurilateral efforts, but also multilateral effort initiatives on green goods. On one hand, environmental provisions and commitments will need to become more detailed in terms of scope and ambitions. But on the other hand, this direct participation in these efforts will not only allow Indonesian exporters to benefit from more market access, but also give Indonesia a seat at the table when these discussions are being made. All in all of these recommendations will help strengthen the complementarity between trade and climate policies. This includes more systematically integrating trade policies and more explicitly including them in broader climate strategies, including the nationally determined contributions. We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and you can download this report and more details at the link now on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bu Angela, for your presentations and recommendations. They are highly contributive. The presentation provides an excellent foundation for our next segment, expanding on what Bu Angela has mentioned. Next, we will have a panel discussion that will be moderated by Ibu Sila, a senior economist at the World Bank. I will now hand the session over to Ibu Sila. Ibu Sila, please come to the stage.
Selamat pagi dan selamat datang. On behalf of the Ministry of Trade and the World Bank, a very, very warm welcome to our panel discussion today here. It's really, really great to see so many familiar faces in the audience. I recognize many of you, great supporters of our work and our engagement and collaboration. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists to the stage here today. Ibu Laxmi Kusumawati, Director of Trade, Investment and International Economic Cooperation at Bapenas. Ibu Laxmi, please welcome to the stage. Ibu Mari Pangestu, Professor of Economics at the University of Indonesia and former World Bank Managing Director. Thank you very much, Ibu Mari. And Ibu Noni Purnomo, President Commissioner of Bluebird Group Holding. Ibu Noni, thank you so much. Thank you very much on behalf of the Ministry of Trade and the World Bank for accepting to be part of this panel discussion today. And I guess on my end, let me just start by saying that I am really honored and really inspired to be with you here today, a really accomplished group of women leaders. It's really inspiring to see you. We hope to learn from you today, and also I'm really excited to have your insights on the crucial role of trade and trade policies for Indonesia's green transformation. That being said, we have about 40 minutes, but quite a lot of ground to cover, so let us start. I guess the goal was to complement Ibu Angela's presentation and the findings of report. We aim to cover a wide range of topics, including how the Indonesian government is spearheading efforts to build in sustainability and green transformation objectives into long-term development planning, but also to hear more about the contribution of trade and trade policies from a backward-looking perspective and also potentially from a forward-looking perspective, and how they can contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation efforts, and more broadly, growth and sustainability objectives. And bringing all of this together from the perspective of practitioners, to discuss a little bit about the opportunities, but also the challenges of the private sector in adopting some of these environmentally friendly measures and technologies, and how is it that the government potentially adapts some of the supportive policies that are needed for the private sector. As we heard from Ibu Angela's presentation, it's going to be really crucial to bring in the private sector for these really important development objectives. Now, before kicking off the discussion, allow me to spend a few minutes to introduce our distinguished panelists. Our first panelist, Ibu Lakshmi Kusumawati, currently serves as the Director of Trade Investment and Economic Cooperation at Bapenas. In addition to this, she is also Deputy Director for Conventional Financial Services and State-Owned Enterprises Directorate at Bapenas. She holds a PhD from the Netherlands, where she studied FDI, Inclusive Growth and Institutions in Indonesia. Warm welcome, Ibu Lakshmi, and thank you for joining us. Our second distinguished panelist, Ibu Mari Pangestu, is Professor of Economics at the University of Indonesia and former World Bank Managing Director of Development Policy and Partnerships. Ibu Mari brings over 30 years of experience in academia, in international organizations and government, working on international trade, investment, development in multilateral, regional, as well as in national settings. Ibu Mari has served as World Bank Managing Director, overseeing the World Bank's research and data group, as well as the work program of the global practice groups, as well as the external and corporate relations function of the World Bank. Ibu Mari has also served as Indonesia's Minister of Trade from 2004 to 2011 and Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy from 2011 to 2014. A very warm welcome, Ibu Mari. Thank you so much for accepting to join. And our third distinguished panelist, Ibu Noni Purnomo, currently serving as the President Commissioner of Bluebird Group Holding. During her long and distinguished tenure, she continued the company's commitments to reducing carbon footprint and upholding environmental sustainability while spearheading socially oriented and philanthropic endeavors, including on education, health, women's empowerment through Kartini Bluebird. As President, Director, and CEO of the Bluebird Group in 2019, she led the company's historic launch of the first e-taxi initiative in Indonesia, very, very relevant to our discussion today. Among other notable appointments, she was also Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University of Indonesia, the Board of Trustees of Clean Air Indonesia, Independent Commissioner of Zurich Asuransi Indonesia, and she was featured as the 2023 Forbes list of most important women leaders in Asia. Thank you very much, Ibu Noni. And with that, allow me to kick off our panel discussion with the very first question for Ibu Lakshmi. So I think we've been also closely following that Bapenas is currently finalizing several strategy documents, including the 2025-29 National Medium-Term Development Plan, the 2025 Government Work Plan, as well as leading the Indonesia Green Growth Program. So we were hoping that you could give us an overview of how trade policies in particular feature in some of these strategy documents in support of green transformation objectives, but also in support of increasing private sector participation, access to green technologies, and development of green industries. Ibu Lakshmi, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Sheila, the moderators, and Excellency, good morning for all of the participants here, Pak Kasan, Bu Satu, Pak Habib, Bu Angela, and also all of the excellent participants for today's panelists discussion. For your questions, that's correct that Indonesia, especially National Development Planning Ministry, Bapenas, currently developed the National Long-Term National Development Plan 2025-2045. And also currently we also developed the technocratic process for the medium-term development plan 2025-2029. And for your information, that our national long-term development plan 2025-2045 already have a final draft, and currently is still process of a regulation for the documents. And we can have the long-term development plan as the reference for all of the national development plan in Indonesia until 2045. So as already mentioned by Ibu Satu, Pak Kasan, and also Ibu Angela, that we have a global trend currently. The issues of sustainability become our global trend. And it's not only a concern from the government in the global, but also a concern from the consumer and also private sectors. So it means that the government in the most of the countries already provide a policy to reduce the emission by having the importance of the trade policy to reduce the emissions. It means that all of the traded goods and services comes to the country should follow the requirements of environmentally friendly products. So that becomes the concern and issues in a global, and it's also considered in our national development plan. And the second one, the consumers in global trends also have increasing awareness of the environmental products. So it means that they would like to buy products that already have the environmental labels and many things that related to the sustainability aspects. And the last one is the business sectors itself in the global, also aware about the reducing the carbon footprints. So because they know that by having a products that have a lower carbon footprint, they can increase their revenue, capturing the willingness of the consumers to buy the products, and also save energy and costs. And they also considers the regulations that can be implemented to their products from the other countries. So it means that in a global trend, the sustainability become the global trends that cannot be avoided by Indonesia. So the important things from today's discussions that Indonesia in the National Development Plan also considers the aspect of sustainability, because it will, when I heard about the topics today, it's very interesting, because the main idea from today's topic is we have to improve our competitiveness. If we would like to compete with others in the global, so we have to improve our products and considering the sustainability aspects. In our National Development Plan for 2025-2045, especially for the related to the trade, we have the direction for the developments that we have to integrate our domestic economy and also connect it to the global economy. So it means the global issues should be considered in order to integrate our economy. Issues of environmental, the sustainability, and also inclusive become the direction of our policy in Indonesia for the future. So it means that today's discussion is very important, and is our national development plan. Even though currently we're still in process of the technocratic process for National Medium-Term Development Plan 2025-2029, but we already consider that the sustainability aspects, environmentally friendly products, goods and services should be improved if we would like to compete with the global market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Laxmi. So it's really exciting to hear about this really comprehensive strategy addressing issues from this green development perspective for both businesses, for consumers, for trade policies. Congratulations to you and the team for all the hard work that I imagine went into this. Now, I think our team had a long history of working with you as well as with Ibu Winnie, Bapenas in general, to potentially help you with analytics and work that would help you design some of these policies. So I think we are happy to continue, and I think, as you mentioned, this report will be potentially very useful for that perspective as well. And with that, if I may, let me turn to Ibu Mari with our next question to sort of complement Ibu Lakshmi's perspective with her very own. I think Ibu Mari has been sitting on many sides of the aisle as a policymaker, as an academician, as part of the international arena as well. So we were hoping to hear from you, Ibu Mari, from your perspectives and your views. I guess the question to you is twofold. A bit of a backward-looking perspective, but also from a forward-looking perspective on trade policy framework in Indonesia. How have these been contributing to green development and developing the enabling trade policy framework, again, from a backward-looking perspective, and then from a forward-looking perspective, how come some of these trade policies be incorporated, and what would be those trade policies that we should focus on? Over to you, Ibu Mari. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, and it's good to be here with all of you to talk about a very important topic, and obviously something very topical coming out of COP28 and coming out from all the prioritization of climate, but not just climate, but how does climate action also relate to development outcomes, including trade outcomes. Because I think that's been the principle, if you sort of flash back and then flash forward. If I flash back on how long I've been working on this issue, I would probably identify the first time that we faced the issue with palm oil, where at that time Greenpeace had come up with a study to show, at least from their perspective, that their conclusion was that we should ban the exports of palm oil because it was based on deforestation and displacing the orangutan. There was a very powerful advertisement, if you remember, this was around the mid-2000s. And it led to Unilever and Nestle saying, okay, we'll stop buying palm oil from Indonesia. So rather drastic action. And the outcome of that was that I went and talked directly to the CEOs of these private sector companies. Said, you've been buying palm oil from us for 60 years. You can't just say, no, we stopped buying. You are affecting the livelihoods of millions of smallholder farmers. So this is where it's not just about climate. It has to have you have to look at the sustainability part of it, which is the development part, the impact it has on livelihoods and on poverty and so on. So I think that has become a principle of, I would think, moving forward, this is how I think Indonesia has approached the issue of climate and trade. That yes, there is a sustainability and climate standards issue, but you must also take into consideration the livelihood and the poverty impact, which is exactly what we did. We negotiated, well, we didn't negotiate. And it was also the first time you're not dealing with governments. You're dealing with consumer pressure, which is pressuring the private sector. So it's not G2G negotiation anymore. And what we did come up with a solution was, okay, there was a study by Greenpeace, but let's agree to appoint an independent third-party study to show, is Indonesia violating the sustainability production of palm oil aspects that you are concerned with? So we agreed, and an independent study was done. And we also agreed that whatever gaps you find, the companies have to comply with an action plan, and we would appoint a third party to monitor and verify whether they've adopted these action plans or not. So it was a long process. Of course, moving, if you sort of fast forward, today, of course, it's much more complicated than just the sustainable production part. It's getting into all kinds of things, more than just the production part, the labor part, and the whole supply chain traceability. But my point is that we started, I think, the journey on trade and environment and trade and climate with the recognition that you have to have standards of sustainability which is agreed upon, whether it's internationally or bilaterally, but there has to be an agreement, and it has to be some kind of science base to it, not one-sided. And this is, I think, one of the important, I would say, recommendations moving forward. We as developing countries, we need to recognize that companies, the private sector, whether it's trade or investment-driven, sustainable supply chain and traceability across the whole value chain is what we have to be facing. And it is the source of our competitiveness, as you were saying, and as the presentation showed. So this means it is about standards, it is about verification, it is about having the ability to have measure the traceability across the supply chain. And this is where I would say that we, as developing countries, we need to be advocating, whether it's with the EU or whether it's with the WTO, that capacity building is very important. Large companies, like in the case of palm oil, going back to the example of palm oil, the large companies were able to come up with their plans and implement it, but the smallholder weren't able to without capacity building and assistance. So you have to provide time, and you have to combine it with capacity building. Again, it's climate and development. The objectives need to be very clear from our perspective. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, because it continues to be a very important point that Indonesia faces, and it is something we need to advocate, as well as be very clear that there has to be a science base. Otherwise, it can lead to protectionism from the developed markets as well. Maybe just very quickly on fast forward, what kind of policies we foresee, or at least we think Indonesia should be undertaking. I think you have an excellent set of recommendations already. Let me just comment on a few. I think the tariffs, definitely, on the non-tariff measures, streamlining, yes. I think the notion of being able to import low carbon technologies, including services. So it's not just goods, but also services. Because the consultants or the technical expertise that come with the technology, they need to come with the people who can deliver and help you implement these technologies. So I think having an open trade and investment policy on environmental goods and services is going to be very important for your decarbonization strategy. And to the extent that local content requirements also hinder the ability to adopt low carbon technologies, this needs to be taken into account. We've actually been very open on electric vehicles, but I think on the renewable energy, solar panels, and so on, we need to take a more, what would you say, a more productive approach that you may need to import at the beginning because you don't have the scale and you don't have the demand domestically. But eventually it will come, and the production will start happening in your country. But you've got to start by being able to import. At least on, this is kind of, if you can do it in EV, I would think you should be able to do it in renewable energy. And then my related point to that is that I think we need to learn from what happened with solar technology, how much it came down in price because of scale and the ability to have open trade and investment happen. And this is not something that's happening with the other technologies, right? So, and also with all the developed country policies on trade that tries to exclude foreign entities of concern, which is actually affecting the global supply chain and making it more expensive and less accessible for developing countries to access low carbon technology. I think this is something we need to really address very much front and center. And finally, the role of regional agreements, bilateral agreements, and multilateral agreements on trade and environment, because I think your report shows it very clearly, the rise in trade-related climate policies. And this is going to distort the outcomes that will happen, and it will come at the cost of higher price and access for developing countries. And that's where we really need to also advocate. And my own learning on this is that climate is now mainstream, and we have to really deal with it. This is, if you flash back, the first COP that talked about trade, you said that there was a trade day in this COP28. I just want to reflect Indonesia's contribution to this in the COP in Bali in 2007 was the first time that we actually discussed trade in a COP. We had trade ministers come during that COP, and it was the first time trade and environment actually was discussed by trade ministers. And it was the creation of the Trade and Environment Committee in the WTO. So I think this needs to happen. There has to be dialogue. There has to be an agreement on the disciplines, let's say. Otherwise, you will end up with a higher cost for decarbonization, which will come at the expense of developing countries.
Thank you very much, Ibu Mari, for highlighting these crucial points that I think also very well come out in our report. I think in terms of standards, in terms of capacity building, the role of evidence-based policy making, really, it's really a big part of what we do, and also a big part of what the goal of our report was, to bring to the table all of this analysis in support of some of the impacts that we see already happening. The role of services, local content requirements, electric vehicles. I think all of these issues, it will keep popping up in today's panel discussion as well as in the lightning talk, so I don't want to dwell too much in depth. But the one thing that I did pick up on from both Ibu Lakshmi and Ibu Mari is really the role of the private sector, and you said it both explicitly. And I think this is a great segue to bring in Ibu Noni into the discussion. So I guess, Ibu Noni, from your experience and your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges but also opportunities that Bluebird has been facing in implementing some of these environmental friendly practices? And how is it that the trade policy framework could be improved in order to better support the private sector more generally, to make sure that it has a big contribution to some of these green development objectives? Over to you, Ibu Noni. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, congratulations for the release of the report. And I certainly hope that by because you have given a very good recommendations to the role of the policy itself on the impact of the transformation of the green economy in Indonesia. And thank you for inviting me in my limited capacity as, at this moment, a practitioner and importer, not the exporter. But I also had a privilege of having some experience, limited experience in hearing the concerns and the issues being raised by the foreign investor when they want to invest more in green economy in Indonesia. So maybe I would like to, if I may, to share both sides of that. So since the very beginning, Bluebird is very much focused on the environment. And this is the main reason why we have our own maintenance department. This is the very reason why when President Jokowi announced of the Indonesia aspiration to have a net zero in 2060, I think we quickly got really excited and trying to quickly adopt in our limited capacity, how can we take part in this journey? So we have done several projects in relation to reducing the emission. In early 80s, we imported CNG converters from New Zealand. So back then, it was really early. And so we have several projects. Of course, some are more successful than others. And this time, I have to say, the role of government is very much better compared to the previous years. I think Ibu Mari and Ibu Laksmi already mentioned how much the Indonesian government has already put a lot of effort in trying to promote this green circular economy in Indonesia. So when we heard the first time, we tried our best to launch the first electric taxi in Indonesia. It took us more than 2 years, actually, from having the first idea to actually launch the electric vehicle itself. Because I think at that time it was a very early stage, right? It's an early stage for the government to start developing policies. And once the presidential decree has been released, and then each ministry and each institution have to adopt the new regulations and making new policies, making new regulations. So I remember we had to coordinate with at least 4 different institutions at that time. And this is actually very important for Indonesia in order to be able to accelerate the adoption. It is extremely important to always include the practitioners as well. I think it would be very efficient for the policymaker to do that, because so that the policymaker can address the priority issues, so that we can all implement the vision very quickly. So to date, of course, as mentioned also, there's a lot of improvement in it, but we still face issues in trying to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicle in Indonesia. Number one, because at this moment, the supply chain, there's no significant electric vehicle manufacturing company in Indonesia. Of course, there's a lot of interest and already pledges, but at this moment, the reality is we still don't have enough variety of vehicles that especially commercial companies can adopt. And the adoption of electric vehicle can be accelerated by encouraging commercial companies in transportation industry to adopt to changing the fleet to electric vehicles. So I think reduction in tariff is still needed. At this moment, the VAT and also the stamp duty, import stamp duty is still not exempted, which would help a lot, because one of the main reasons why the adoption rate is not that great is because of the cost itself. The acquisition cost of an electric vehicle is about 2 to 2.5 times of the combustion engine. So for commercial companies to adopt that, we need additional incentive to do it. And what's also important is the infrastructure. A lot of companies are still reluctant to purchase or even long-term lease electric vehicles because they're still questioning about the infrastructure itself. Is there enough infrastructure to support? And then what happens to the maintenance? What happens to the resale value of the vehicle itself? So there's still a lot of issues needs to be addressed in order to accelerate the grab. And another point that Ibu Mari raised, which is very dear to our company as well, is the solar panel. Because we want to adopt the installation of solar panel as much as we can. But at this moment, the cost benefit is still not viable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Noni. I think the challenges that you highlight are also very well highlighted across our report. And I saw Ibu Lakshmi taking notes. So I think it very well emphasizes the idea of strengthening public-private collaboration in order to try to understand some of these challenges and see how is it that the government could better support the private sector, undertake some of these efforts that, as you highlight, for now may or may not be necessarily cost-effective as of yet. So there's a huge role here for the government to adopt some of these supportive and enabling trade policy and more broadly other policy frameworks. So I think we do have time for another quick round of questions, and we already covered a lot of ground. We heard from Ibu Lakshmi about what the government is currently doing, from Ibu Mari about backward and forward-looking perspectives on some of these important trade policies, the challenges faced by the private sector, and how we could strengthen collaboration between the public and the private sector. So I think maybe to take this discussion one step forward and to turn to Ibu Lakshmi, you will see it in our report, it comes out really well, that there has been a decoupling of growth as well as trade in general from carbon emissions in Indonesia. So the question to you, Ibu Lakshmi, from your perspective, how could we better balance economic interests with some of these environmental objectives when we formulate whether trade policies or other supportive policies? Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sila, for the question. It's very good questions. So actually, Indonesian government currently would like to alignment between trade growth and also carbon emission. So it means that by having our national development plan for 2025-2045, we would like to transform our economy. And one of the thing is we would like to transform by having a green economy as a transformation. So it means that by having the transformation economy in green economy, we would like to make it balance between trade, growth, and also carbon emission. So it will not be a trade-off between trade and growth or with a carbon emission. Because if we consider the sustainability aspect, the environmental aspects in our development plan, so it means that by having the good quality of environment, the human resource, the quality of human resource, the quality of the environment will be good, the human resource also become healthy, and it will improve the productivity of the human resource itself as an engine of the economic growth. And besides that, if we consider the sustainability and environmental aspects in our trade and growth, it means that our productivity also will increase. The competitiveness in our global markets also will improve. So it means that with these two channels, the sustainability and environmental aspects will improve the economy. So there will be no trade-off between the trade improvement and economic growth improvement with the carbon emission. It will be in the same direction, and it will be good for the long-term development. Because all of the economy can be improved, inclusive, and also sustainable for our next generation. So for this one, the Bappenas also already included the aspect of environmental issues in our RPJMN. And as I mentioned before, that we have the direction for the trade to make our economy integrated domestically and connected with the global in the supply chain global. So it means that if we would like to compete with the global market, we have to improve the competitiveness of our economic domestic by considering the sustainability aspect in production and also in ensuring that policy for trade also conducive for the production of the product itself. So as mentioned by Ibu Marie and also Ibu Noni, that the policy for trade policy should be conducive for export imports that ensure the availability of the raw materials, availability of the capital, and also the policy for the trade itself. It cannot be gold loan. It should be in line with the investment policy, trade policy, industrial policy in the same direction towards the sustainability issues. So it means that we would like to have the harmonization, the alignment of policy towards the sustainability, especially for those three sectors. And besides that, actually, we also have to consider another sectors that's non-environmental ministries, for instance, like the manpower ministries. Even though it's not related directly to the environmental aspects, but it's also important to prepare the manpower, the human resource. So it means that if we would like to go to the direction of the green industry, we have to also have a plan in the ministry in the Ministry of Manpower to see the capacity of human resource should be improved. So that's why that means that the human resource can compete with the green industry, can be absorbed by the industry itself, can adopt and use the technology in a green. So as mentioned by Ibu Mari, the high growth is not enough for the development. The sufficient one is we have to have the inclusive economic growth. So the economic growth itself, high economic growth, it should be followed by the high welfare of the society. There will be no left behind. The transition to the green energy also can be followed by the participation of the society in the economy. So, however, the harmonization and the synchronization policy and to support the energy transition or everything related to the environmental or sustainability aspect, we need a collaboration. The government cannot do by themselves to move to the sustainability aspects. The private sectors, society, and also international organizations like World Bank, and also country partners, we have many collaboration and coordination to move together because the sustainability, the environmentally friendly products, goods and services in Indonesia will also affect the global itself. The carbon emission in the global can be achieved to be reduced as already already committed by most of the countries, especially Indonesia. So I think that optimizing the cooperations, it's become important. Indonesia already have FTA SEPA, but we look forward to optimizing the benefit received from the FTA SEPA with countries and looking forward for another one. But together, we need collaboration for that one. So SEPA, for instance, we have economic technical cooperations. We already received support from the countries. Together, we can develop the industries in Indonesia and compete with the global markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Laxmi. Really exciting to hear that you don't see this trade-off between decarbonization and economic growth, and more broadly around economic interests. And also for highlighting some of these supportive policies, whether that is for investment, for human capital, the private sector, more broadly on collaboration with all the stakeholders in this particular arena. I'm really glad to hear that this is your position. Now, I think this is a really good building point for shifting gears a little bit and moving a little bit beyond the Indonesian domestic economy and thinking about all the other changes that are undeniably happening in the international trading and investment system. We see it, I think, with our very own eyes, and our analysis supports this. So I guess in terms of policies of other countries in support of some of these sustainability and environmental objectives, we've seen a wide variety of examples, including the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism. Shortly, we always refer to it as CBAM, or the Net Zero Industry Act, or the US Inflation Reduction Act. And I'm turning to Ibu Mari to bring in her perspectives and experiences from being very active in the international arena, and to sort of bring in her views on what are the biggest opportunities and the challenges for Indonesia in light of some of these policies that other developing and developed countries are undertaking, and how the reshaping of the international trading system is going to present some of these opportunities. Thank you. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sheila. If I go back to 2007, when we had the trade ministers meet on the sidelines of COP, we had huge debates, and you know, environment always tried to come into the WTO because the WTO has sanctions. That's always been the case. The multilateral environmental agreements didn't have sanctions, right? So is a policy that is a trade-related climate policy, is it really distorting trade? Is it really serving the climate objective? That's been like the debate until, I would say, 2015, when things start changing. At that time, even I remember Pascal Lamy said, you know, we can continue to debate and have discussions, but until there is an agreement on carbon, we can't move, right? And this is exactly where we are today. With the carbon border adjustment mechanism, it's, you know, how do we measure the leakage and then tax that leakage? And for that, you need standards of the carbon content of whether it's a sector or whether it's more generally. And this is where the direction that's going. And we as Indonesia, we need to also be very cognizant and be part of the conversation. It's not going to be something that's going to happen tomorrow, but there's a lot of discussion about the carbon content. How do you actually measure the carbon content? How do you agree on the standard? How do you measure it? Who measures it? The verification process and so on. And this is going to be a process, and it's going to be something that we will face in the trading as an exporter, and it'll be part of competitiveness. And it has to start with the carbon pricing mechanism in your own country, and the carbon trading and the carbon tax that you have to start introducing. So that's another component. It's not trade policy, but it is going to impact on trade if you don't, you know, how much you do on that front. And this is where I think a lot of homework is needed for us, whether it's the private sector or the government on that front. And the thing about the IRA, just want to mention finally on the IRA, because what IRA is doing is actually green industrial policy by developed country, which is very much in violation of the WTO trade disciplines. It is discriminatory because it's saying, yes, you can get these subsidies, and yes, you can produce batteries here, but your components cannot come from a foreign entity of concern. You know, that's really discrimination, even though the rationale is security. But that is the reality. So how do we, Indonesia, because we have the resources, we have nickel, we have ambition and aspiration to develop the batteries, the EV batteries. I would say 2-3 things on this front. One is that if you are talking about wanting to build an electric vehicle ecosystem around the fact that you have resources, it can't just be about the domestic market. You have to be doing it with a scale in mind of either regional or global market. And that's why you do need to address this discriminatory value chain, if you like, that's developing. And my second point is that there has to be one response. If you cannot change the policy of the US, then I'm advocating for regional value chain, yeah, where you can reduce the concentration and participation of the foreign entity of concern, and you can have a regional value chain. You can think about RCEP. We have nickel, Philippines has nickel, Australia has lithium, Malaysia has rare earths. We can actually have a regional value chain as long as we agree and not compete in the development of the EV batteries or the EV vehicles. There is right now a race also to produce the EV vehicles between the ASEAN countries. And there is obviously investments from the foreign entity of concern, both on the upstream and the downstream. So how do we manage this? How do we diversify the value chain in a way which is going to help us have the access and the lower cost of the decarbonization technology that we actually need? I mean, there's a similar issue on the renewable energy side. So Unfortunately, short of the US changing and the WTO changing, I think we have to find a way to work within that trading environment that we are facing today.
Thank you very much, Ibu Mari, for bringing to the table these fascinating perspectives. I very well note your point on developing some of these regional value chains. I think our analysis, whether that's focused on ASEAN or more broadly on the region, also highlights that there's significant potential to be developed there. So add to that, that Indonesia's significant potential for some of the development of some of these key, crucial, environmentally friendly goods, technologies, and services, as you mentioned. I think it's great to hear. Now, I think this would take us to our very last question, and I'm turning to Ibu Noni to bring it all together for us. I think from, again, back to the perspectives of the practitioners, those that are in the trenches facing some of these challenges. And the question to you, Ibu Noni, how can the public-private partnerships be strengthened in order to adopt the promotion of these practices and sustainable development objectives? And with Ibu Lakshmi here and many other relevant stakeholders, how is it that the policymakers and the broader stakeholder community can work together in Indonesia to make this happen? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a bit nervous because it's written time's up, so I'm trying to make this as briefly as possible. I think it is really important for all of us to understand that the policy itself is an enabler. I think what is most important is to achieve the vision that is being stated, that PPP have to work together, as mentioned several times in here. And I'm so happy to hear Ibu Mari mention about the regional collaboration, because at the end of the day, for a business, for-profit business, we have to answer to our shareholders. So it is very important for us to work together with all stakeholders to be able to, because it is not a choice anymore to be green. I think it is a necessity for all of us, because we believe to be sustainable, you have to be sustainable, you have to take part. But how? And so I think number one, again, collaboration. I think having an inclusive dialogue and include every single stakeholders in the discussion, I think it is very important. And trying to find a solution on how to solve having the most effective and efficient way of implementing these green policies and green initiatives. I think, in short, I think those are the very important thing. And we understand, as business people, we understand how difficult it is for the policymakers to have to do the balancing act of having to give consistency for long term, and yet also have to be able to adapt and adjust to the changing needs of the industry itself. I mean, when we talk about local content, I understand, I hear a lot of that, we still face a lot of issues with adjusting or adopting to the local content when it comes to manufacturing in Indonesia. But have anyone seen the master list? I mean, how many items that the policymaker have to deal with this master list? So I think, again, having a collaboration, open discussion about how to find a solution, I think that's what's most important for all of us at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Noni. And I think I couldn't have said it better. And being conscious of time, allow me to just quickly thank all of our distinguished panelists for accepting to be here today and for this fascinating discussion. I think we have another set of lightning talks planned to also complement some of your views from a more deeper perspective. And again, thank you, and looking forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Mari, Ibu Laksmi, Ibu Noni, and Ibu Sila for a highly insightful dialogue regarding the importance of trade policies for Indonesia's green transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard about some insights that beneficial for Indonesia to pursue greener economy. We will now listen to 3 individuals in their pursuit of green transformation. First, please join me in welcoming Bapak Suharji Gasali, Managing Director of Amandina Bumi Nusantara. Bapak Suharji, the stage is yours.
Selamat pagi, hadirin yang saya hormati.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Izinkan saya untuk
Allow
menyapa
me to
yang saya
greet
hormati Bapak Kasan
distinguished
dari
Bapak
Kementerian
Kasan
Perdagangan
from the
Republik
Ministry
Indonesia,
of Trade of the
Ibu
Republic of
Satu
Indonesia,
Kakonen
Ibu
dari
Satu
World Bank,
Kakonen from the World Bank, Indonesia and Timor-Leste's office, Bu Laksmi from Bapenas, Ibu Noni from Bluebird Group, Ibu Mari Elka Pangestu from the Universitas Indonesia, Ibu Chandra from Ekadin, and Mbak Fajar from Seksora. Let us address our gratitude for the Almighty because of His blessing that we can all be here to attend the Strategic Issue Forum on Trading Towards Sustainability, the role of trade policy in Indonesia's green transformation. In this opportunity, I represent Amadina Bumi Nusantara and the Mahija Foundation. I'd like to present about the plastic recycle potential that will improve our economic potentials. Amadina Bumi Nusantara is a company that produce the recycled PET. So we collected the post-consumed bottles across Indonesia to be processed into a food contact approved. So it from bottle to bottle again. So when we've decided to come up with this project, we are very much aware that the challenge here is not only about how producing the products, but more about how we collect the plastic bottles across Indonesia responsibly, and we can give a positive impact to everyone involved in the supply chain. So that's why we established a non-profit foundation called Mahija Parahita Nusantara Foundation. With these 2 entities, we expect to give positive impact to Indonesia's economy as well as to the Mother Earth in Indonesia that can be cleaner and free from plastic waste. So in Indonesia, plastic waste is still a problem. According to the data from the World Bank in 2021, we have 4.9 million tons of plastic waste that are not well managed or mismanaged. From the private sector, we want to also we want to positively contribute to resolve this plastic waste problem in Indonesia. We do believe that by producing this recycled PET, in which the carbon footprint is only 1/3 of the virgin PET, which will bring a lot of impact how we can use plastics in our daily lives. And the carbon footprint is only 1/3 of the virgin PET, and we can consider our products as environmentally green products, and we reduce around 43,000 tons of the CO2 emission. And with this awareness of the people to use more environmental friendly packaging. We want to be part of the solution with the establishment of our company, Amandina Bumi Nusantara. Amandina Bumi Nusantara has been in operation since 2022, mid-2022. We've constructed our factory in 2021. That was during the COVID-19 pandemic. So it was on the peak of Delta. That was another challenge that we have to counter. So we started the production in 2022. In 2023, we've collected around 23 tons of PET's bottle. And then in 2024, we plan to collect 33,000 tons or equal to 2 billions of bottles that we can collect it from the disposal area, from river, from sea or ocean, and we can collect that and we added value and they can be produced or recycled into plastic bottles again. So 60% of our customers are Indonesia, and we've exported to Southeast Asia and the European countries. We've heard earlier about the certification. Amandina Bumi Nusantara is the first company to be certified with the SNI for recycled PET. We've also talked about the challenges around certification, even though we have been certified, but every country that we are going to export the products, they have all different requirements and they also have different demands. So that's why we are trying to complement everything, even though we already have 8 certification. We have 3 more to go this year so that we'll be able to expand our market for export-oriented product. So I talked earlier about the reason why we established our foundation, the Mahia Parahita Nusantara. We know the challenge that we are facing here is about waste sector is an informal sector. That's our biggest challenge. How we can collect all of these used plastic waste and we can do it responsibly. We also conducted audit to our network. We built collaboration with SMEs across Indonesia, and we also improved their capacity so that they'll be able to collect all of these. And we also organize a lot of social activities to help those who are involved in the collection of this PET bottles. And we can also educate the communities, educate the society, understanding the importance of plastic separation or waste separations so that we'll be able to contribute to our environment. We already have 30 collection centers across Indonesia. We are going to develop that even further. We are still concentrated mainly in Java because, as we know, 60% of our population is in Java, but we are now expanding to Sumatra. We are entering Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and Papua. So we've collaborated with more than 2,000 collection partners. They're the collectors, and we estimate that the recycling heroes or the collectors, we have more than 40,000 recycling heroes that collaborate with us. So we have collected more than 36,000 in the past 18 months, 30,000 tons, and we have given positive impact, improving the livelihood for more than 21,000 individuals. And in terms of education, we do believe that the recycling heroes want to have much better future. So we do believe that with education, we'll be able to change. We can transform their mindset as well as their lives. We have adopted 7 schools, and of the 7 schools, we have around 1,000 children. And for the past 18 months, we were able to give positive impact to more than 4,000 children whose educations are assisted by our companies. In terms of the challenges, collaboration in the recycled industry is very limited. Most of us, are lack of collaboration, so it's so difficult to collaborate. In terms of the government aspect, we want the national government to give us or to have a regulation that would require the producers to use the recycled plastic products. And we want to also to ensure that there is a good infrastructure for that. And in terms of the awareness, the customers, most of our customers would like to have environmental friendly products, and how we can collaborate with the MSE so that it will be much more formal. So from the foundation that and a company with Amandina and Mahiza, we with the good collaboration between the private sectors and the government and all of the organizations such as the World Bank, we will be able to bring more positive impact to Indonesia's economy, and we can turn some ways that has very limited value to be lifted to have added value, so that we can have a positive impact to the environment of Indonesia. Thank you. Good morning.
or biomass, and then the captured carbon dioxide is compressed, transported either with pipeline or sometimes truck, but it's quite rare, ship, rail, and then after that it is injected into deep geological formation. So when we are talking about deep geological formation, it is more than 1 kilometer below the earth. It's not It's not like as deep as your groundwater. It's not 100 meters, it's not 200 meters, it's really deep. Such as depleted oil and gas reservoir, that is oil and gas reservoir that is not used anymore, or saline aquifers. So that's the end of it. You store it under the deep geological formation. Sometimes the carbon can be used as well, for example, as food, like you drink a carbonated drink that has carbon inside it, or as feedstock for chemical production, or even for fuel production. And when that happens, you also call it CCUS, or carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So that's the whole concept of the value chain. So now you are asking why carbon capture and storage, why the need for it? So carbon capture and storage, one of the reasons is decarbonizing hard-to-abate industry. For example, cement, steel, and chemicals. What is hard-to-abate industries? The hard-to-abate industries are industries that within the process requires very high temperature that difficult to electrify because it requires really high temperature, so you need to get that temperature by burning something. And that's typically fossil fuel. And this process, for example, in cement production, the clinker process requires 1,500 Celsius. It's very difficult to electrify that. You cannot use solar for that. It's really difficult. Therefore, one of the options to decarbonize those industries is capturing the carbon and then storing it. And then there are other reasons for carbon capture and storage. For example, enabling the production of low-carbon hydrogen. It means you are producing hydrogen from gas and then capturing the carbon. Then now you are not really producing carbon from producing the hydrogen, providing low-carbon power from existing assets, and also delivering negative emission. Delivering negative emissions means you are directly capturing carbon from the air. It's called DACS, or direct air capture and sequestration, or from bioenergy, which is producing, using bioenergy plus carbon capture and storage. So a lot of people are actually thinking, and there are a lot of opinions that it's okay? That carbon capture and storage is actually the trick of fossil fuel industries to actually prolong their business. Probably there's a little truth of that, but actually, even in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and International Energy Agency scenarios to reach net zero, both require carbon dioxide and removal, which is including carbon capture and storage. Of course, so this is an example of a graph where from the global energy sector carbon dioxide emission reduction in the Sustainable Development Goals scenario by IEA. In this graph, you require carbon capture and storage. Of course, this is not the only measure. You have to combine it together with hydrogen, avoiding demand, technology performance, etc., to be able to reduce and to reach our goal of net zero. But the message is that carbon capture and storage is one component of it. And as you can see, it's not small, actually. The orange part is quite big. So what is the state of carbon capture and storage in Indonesia? It's actually quite interesting. There are around 15 carbon capture and storage and also utilization in Indonesia, and planned to be streamlined before 2030. Indonesia also has the most mature carbon capture and storage policy framework in Southeast Asia. And Indonesia has an ambition to be the hub, the regional hub for carbon capture and storage, because Indonesia has a large geological storage potential. So geological storage potential is not something that you can create. It's by nature, right? And Indonesia has that potential. That's why we can be the hub for carbon capture and storage in Southeast Asia particularly. So what is the challenge with carbon capture and storage? The challenge of carbon capture and storage is always the same, how it can be economically viable and investable. Because the carbon capture and storage cost is high and is front-ended. So there is little economic value for emitters or industry to actually perform carbon capture and storage compared with just emitting freely carbon dioxide? Like, what's the point? I mean, I can just freely emitting. Why do I have to spend money on carbon capture and storage, which is expensive? And on the other side, the cost of greenhouse gas emission is huge, but it's dispersed, is unevenly distributed, and it's back-ended. So this whole calculation can only change with policy and regulations. So that's why it is really relevant to the thing that the big theme that we are discussing today. The challenge is how we can reflect the cost of greenhouse gas emission into price so that a low carbon product is actually more competitive than the high carbon intensity product of the substitute. So in Indonesia, the regulation exists. It's a ministerial regulation, MEMR, last year, but the coverage is still very limited. Ideally, an ideal package of regulation that is and policy that is supporting carbon capture and storage should consist of minimum carbon valuation, direct or indirect subsidies, and regulating cross-border carbon trades. The carbon valuation has to be interesting enough so that actually freely emitting is actually more expensive than promoting carbon capture and storage. So we are expecting a presidential regulation to come to be released soon to further regulate carbon capture and storage. So with that, we can see that actually trade policies significantly will affect the development of carbon capture and storage in Indonesia. The first one, subsidies and support measures and incentives. Those are important, critical to spearhead new projects and also to catalyze project growth and promote research and development activities. Second, tariffs. As mentioned before by Angela, technology transfer are important to develop CCS projects, therefore relaxing tariff on related technology can positively affect their developments. Carbon border adjustment mechanism will impose fees on imported carbon-intensive goods. Therefore, we will see that this will incite CCS projects, especially led by emitters exporting to EU. And next, but also very important, especially related to Indonesia's ambition to be CCS hub in the region, on developing CCS hub and cross-border CCS activities, trade facilitation measures, bilateral and multilateral trade agreements will streamline and stimulate CCS growth. And clear regulation on cross-border CCS are critical. For example, the carbon valuation and accounting of cross-border CCS projects. Who will get the carbon credits? What are the shares? What are the conditions? What are the tariffs? Those are, for now, are still not regulated, which means that it's good because we have a lot of room to actually regulate it. So that's my last slide. Thank you very much. I hope you have a little light on CCS, and probably see you next month in our CCS workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Chandra, for very innovative insights on carbon capture and storage technology. Last but not least, we have Bapak Fajar Sastrowijoyo, Founder and Managing Director of Syntex Solar. Bapak Fajar, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Pak Hasan, Bu Satu, Bu Mari, Bu Sila, and Bu Angela, Bu Laksmi, Bu Novi, Pak Suarji, and Bu Chandra, all the esteemed speakers, panelists, and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about solar PV today, especially regarding international trade on solar PV. So my name is Fajar Sastrowijoyo and I'm the founder and CEO of Syntex. We are solar PV construction company. We are basically an EPC and we have done around 50 megawatts of PV in the last 4 years for around 100 projects, mainly on rooftops, but also on rural areas for government projects. So I was asked to explain and describe what are the challenges in solar PV development in Indonesia. But I guess 7 minutes is quite short to describe all the problems, so I will just highlight a few. But first of all, let us talk about the solar PV growth in Indonesia. And actually, for the last 3 years, we have experienced a surge in PV plant deployment. Currently, our growth is around 100 to 200 megawatts per year for all the projects all around Indonesia, including government projects, PLN projects, IPPs, and most of all the commercial and industrial segment of the solar PV. And in rooftop sector, the capacity is actually doubling every year. The growth is like 100%, it's massive. So actually we are now adopting solar PV very quickly. Although, of course, it is still so far away from like Thailand and Vietnam and so on, but for us, the contractors and the developers, the growth in the last 3 years is great. Okay, so one of the things that we need to talk is about the international trade for PV projects. So one of the key aspects of the development of renewable energy projects in Indonesia for commercial use is still relies on imported components. So we are talking about the commercial use, not the rural electrification, where the government or PLN is actually building solar PV, but more like in a grant way for the rural communities. If we are talking about the commercial use, we are still relying on imported components. So these these components provide bankability, meaning that lenders and investors trust these brands and these equipments, and also economic feasibility. So now with this kind of components, with these imported components, actually the solar PV cost already can be competitive compared to PLN, to thermal power plants. And actually, for the importation of renewable energy equipments, we already have 0% VAT and 0% customs duty fees, including for the biggest component, which is the PV modules. So this is actually a very good policy for us. However, since I think 2 years ago, we have another regulation which is the SNI regulation. So for all of the imported PV modules, now we are required to register ourselves as like an agent with different SNIs for each importers. So no matter that we are importing the same thing from the same brand, same factory, we need to register differently and do the tests again, pay the fees again to test. And the test should be done on all families. We are saying families. For example, families of module PV of 440 watts to 460, that is one family. And then we want to import another like 540 watt peak family. We need to apply for test again for this kind of product. But as some of you might know, solar PV development is very fast. Every year, the capacity is increasing 20, 30%. So every year we need to test, because every year the product changes. And every distributor, every agent, every importer needs to ask for the SNI. That is why the problem is actually not the test cost. It is 20K USD, is not very high. But the problem is the queue is like 1 year long. So, which means that if I want to register the newest technology of solar PV to get an SNI so that I can import, I need to wait 1 year. So in 1 year, the module is already changing. So this is not very, very feasible to do. So that is one of the problem. And the second problem is about local content. I myself, I mean, we also support local content, but there is some issues with that which I want to address. So Indonesia has a local content regulation which regulates the local content requirement for each of the components of the PV system. So it's not a local content for system per component. It is also, you know, specified. For example, solar modules, we need to reach 40%, no matter how big the system TKDN is. At the moment, the local content regulation only applies for the government or state-owned company projects. The catch is that equipments with local content tend to be more expensive. Sometimes, and this is the important thing that I guess not many of our policymakers is aware, is that it can make the return infeasible or reduce the competitiveness of the solar PV plant, which makes it more expensive than, you know, the thermal power plant prices. So this can make or break the project. And sadly, not many policymakers are aware that this is the problem. It's not that we want to get more profits by importing. It's just that when we are using the current local content prices, the project cannot go because it's too expensive. And the second thing is that investors, especially foreign investors, tend to avoid local content materials due to bankability issues from lenders. I mean, banks from Europe or America or somewhere else, or China even, they will not want to finance a product that they don't know. So this creates more complications. So my last point is that the government needs to find better ways to increase local participation without halting the development of this sector. Instead of forcing projects to use more expensive product, which can cancel the project, we should focus on how we can collaborate with international players to make the local content products more bankable. And actually, there are two Tier 1 products that is already making factories in Java, and we hope that the price can go down as far as 30% for the local content products. And most importantly, the brand is, you know, Tier 1 internationally known brands, which will not create problems for the lenders. So I guess that is all from me. Thank you very much, and I hope that we can develop more solar PV projects together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak Fajar, for shedding light on the solar power plant landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of the event. I trust that you found our event today to be as enlightening as I did. Once more, I thank all our speakers and participants. As a reminder, you can download the report that will be displayed on the screen. And I would like to remind each of you again to complete the evaluation form. Lastly, on behalf of the World Bank and Ministry of Trade, I would like to thank all of you for your participation. See you again at our next event. Thank you.